Hi guys. It's been a long time since I have filmed, and that is because of a lot of things. But I did want to just say thank you for subscribing and watching and being along, even if I'm not here as much as I would prefer. But you know, I still love this, and I have a million things going through my head at all times. I'm a Gemini. We like to stay busy. We like to do, you know, as many things as we want and we can imagine, which is a lot. So that's where I've been. I've been busy with work. I've been busy with my own businesses, and I just have not had time to film. But we're changing that today because we have a dupe video. Okay, so let's just jump in. I know you are all here for the dupe, and that dupe is... Oh wait, shouldn't we maybe tell you what the first one is? So the first product is the Tinted Moisturizer from Laura Mercier. This is the Natural Skin Perfector Broad Spectrum SPF 30 sunscreen. Don't use that SPF as your only SPF though. I shouldn't even mention it. I don't like that they do that because it's not enough to count as your sunscreen. Okay, anyway, so this is an oldie and a goodie. They reformulated it a few years back, or maybe a year back, and it's still beautiful. It's still lovely. It has a huge shade range. You really, to me personally, I don't know what else you want in a tinted moisturizer, except maybe a lower price. And that, my friends, is where the dupe comes in. And the dupe is Colourpop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Acid Tinted Moisturizer. They look almost identical, and they are not the same price. The Laura Mercier comes in at a whopping $47, and that's for 1.7 fluid ounces, which is quite a bit more than you get in a standard foundation. That is usually 1 ounce, so this is 1.7. It is a luxury brand, so you are paying for the name, you're paying for all of these marketing things, but $47 is the price of it. Now the other one we have is the Colourpop one, which is $14. And this is for 1.45 fluid ounces. So it's a little bit less than the Laura Mercier, and it's quite a bit less in money. They both look about the same packaging wise. One does have a pump top though, that's the Colourpop. You can pump that out. Whereas the Laura Mercier, it's just a squeeze, it's just a squeeze tube. So kind of preference, it kind of depends on what you prefer, but at the same time, they're both pretty easy to get out. They're both rubber packaging. They're not going to break if you're traveling with them, which it's still COVID times here. I don't know where you're traveling, but anyway. So as in the past, I'm going to be breaking these down, kind of going over the main ingredients, the main claims, and then the pros and cons of both. I'm also going to be putting them both on my face. So I'm going to be doing one side one side the other. Okay, so we are in a new space up here. The light is coming in over here. I don't have the best studio lighting, but I do want to try to get this on my face as soon as possible, and then I can go over the kind of the rundown of ingredients and the pros and cons. But let's go ahead and get it on so you can see what it looks like. So if you can see, I have a breakout here. This has been a fun few months of just getting breakouts and not knowing what to do. I'm hopefully on the right path, but I don't know. I've never had acne a day in my life, so this is completely new water for me. I've already put on my sunscreen. It's quite a glowy sunscreen, which I kind of like, but we're going to see what these two look like over it. And the way that I'm going to be applying it is I'm going to be using my hands, which is how I always do. You can use a brush, you can use a sponge, you can use whatever you want. Just works for me. Let's start out on the left side of my face with the Laura Mercier. And I have the shade 3C1 Fawn. Okay, so I'm taking about that much, and I'm just going to start dabbing. So the beauty of this one is that you're really going to be able to cover up any redness or kind of small areas of inconsistency and tone in your face. And it does leave a skin-like finish. You really don't feel like you have anything on your face. And it just wears really beautifully throughout the day. You don't have to do this last step with the sponge, but sometimes I feel like it just kind of presses everything in. Now, let's see if we can cover this bad boy with the Colourpop Tinted Moisturizer. And I have this in the shade Medium 11N. These might both be a little bit more of my summer shade, but Again, with the tinted moisturizer, you really do have that freedom, and since you can sheer it out, if you have like a little bit not the correct shade, it's just not as noticed as if you had a full coverage foundation. I actually almost wore this on my wedding day and was going to, but then we had a snafu and I had to get ready in 15 minutes, so I went with the Laura Mercier just because, like I said, tried and true, and I just didn't think, and I wasn't worried about it. So as you can see, it hasn't completely blocked this out, but it definitely has made it, just makes it look like I have a more even toned face. So I really do like these tones. They give me a little bit of warmth, even in the winter when I'm really pale. I use them just because it's not so dark, but it just gives me like a little bit more life in my face. All right, so let's zoom in and see what it looks like. Okay, so I have a blemish there. You can still see it coming through. I have some blemishes there. This one is scarring and red, but it does cover it. And then we just have some dark spots. So like I said, this isn't going to cover every single thing, but nobody sits like this looking at your face. And I think it's a really healthy thing to remember that nobody is going to be this close to your face. Now, for some of these blemishes, I will cover them with a little bit more concealer. But I think as a general rule, this is how most people see your face. And they can see that it looks fairly even in tone. So that's what I go for. I think it's really important that we kind of remember that not everyone sees every imperfection that we may see. But that's for a whole nother video. Okay. And now I'm just going to cover up some of those imperfections just a teensy bit more. This is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer, and I have it in the shade Macadamia. So, if you've noticed, I'm in a different place than I was before. I have moved upstairs. This is my office, and it's just this tiny little alcove off of the bedroom up here, and I love it. I haven't filmed up here. This is the first video, and so I'm still getting used to kind of the light and everything, and I'm working with natural light mostly, so it's kind of hard. You can see that like this side of my face is lighter. Hopefully I will figure something out for the future. I also got a haircut. Okay, so that is everything. Again, this is how you're going to be seeing somebody's face more naturally. You're going to be seeing them kind of in natural light, not up close. So for me, a tinted moisturizer is 100% the way to go. Now, if I were going to recommend to somebody, a friend that was asking which one to get, it really comes down to what you're willing to spend. They are both beautiful. This one comes in 24 shades. This one comes in 20. They do have a pretty diverse shade range for a tinted moisturizer. Like I said before, with a tinted moisturizer, you have a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to your shade because it is so light and you can sheer it out. It doesn't have to be a perfect shade match, but the fact that they both have 20 and 24 shades is pretty great, and I think most people should be able to find their shade. But again, it really comes down to price. I think both of these work pretty equally, and I think the main difference is the price. They both claim to have a lot of added ingredients, which I'm gonna get to in a second. But I think the biggest thing that I cannot overemphasize is that this is 14 and this is 47. Okay, we're done. I just did a really simple face. I'm gonna be working from home today, and I don't need to have like a full beat, which I never do, so that's what we got. All right, now let's get into kind of the ingredients of both of these. Now, there has been some talk about people reading ingredient lists, and it's not always super useful. I disagree with that. I think you can actually learn a lot about an ingredient list. Of course, if that's the only thing you go off of, that's going to not be a complete picture. Formulations are tricky. Just because you can see every ingredient, unless you have an understanding of what those ingredients do and how they interact with each other, you really aren't getting a full picture. So I do want people to keep that in mind. That said, I think it's important that you know what ingredients are in your product and just have a general sense of what they do. Of course, if you want to get further into it, the most important thing is how they interact with each other, and that's really something you can't glean off of just reading the ingredient list. Now, for the Laura Mercier, the first 5 ingredients for this are water, glycerin, butylene glycol, dimethicone, and then a PEG, let me see, I have to read this one off the page. PEG PPG-14/7 dimethyl ether. Sorry. In this circumstance, this one, the PEG, is a skin conditioning ingredient. Like I said though, if you're just looking at 5 ingredients, the first 5, it doesn't necessarily tell you everything. You do need to know what it interacts with, which I'm not going to go into because that's a whole nother video that I'm not prepared for, or you're probably not prepared for. But that said, the first 5 ingredients are pretty standard. None of them are surprising, and they actually all have a really solid purpose. And just from experience and using this, I think the ingredients in this are pretty great. They're not going to be considered clean at Sephora, that type of thing, especially PEGs or PPGs. People don't consider them to be clean. I believe that you should come to your own opinions and not necessarily go off of what other people say. If it works for you, if it's the only thing you can find in your skin tone, you have to do what's best for you. They do claim that there's some oils in it, like tamarind seed extract. Well, that's an extract. And then macadamia oil and cuckoo seed oil. Those are kind of in the middle of the ingredient list. So those oils are intended to keep your skin hydrated all day long, keep it kind of looking fresh and with a skin-like finish. And I think that they do a perfect job of that. This isn't a product that I would say is meant for more dry skin or oily skin. I really do think that this one is great for all types. If you do have oilier skin, you're probably going to want a powder. As you can see, I have quite a bit of glow. That is from some of the sunscreen, but this is something that kind of just lets your skin kind of naturally shine through. So kind of do what you would normally do. If you powder, powder. If you don't, don't. Now, for the Colourpop Pretty Fresh one, they do have quite a bit of dimethicone and silicones in it, and that's not surprising at all for something that's $14 and has kind of the same feel to the Laura Mercier, that they're going to be using some simpler, well, not simple, but cheaper ingredients to get that kind of finish. And that's not to say that this doesn't have silicones or dimethicone. It does, but the first ingredient for this is called cyclopentasiloxane. Sorry, I'm not great with these names. That's the first ingredient. The next one is water, and then you have butylene glycol, cetyl alcohol, and trimethylsiloxysilicate. I didn't say that right, but I'm just going to stop at one try because, yeah. So we do have quite a bit of silicones in it. Again, that's not surprising, and I don't have a problem with silicones. It doesn't have a silicone-y feel, and you kind of know that slippy feel. They both set down pretty well. I'm not powdered at all, and while I do feel like maybe a little sticky, throughout the day it doesn't feel like that. It's not something where like your hair is going to get caught on your face and stick to it. So that's that. Some of the big claims for the Colourpop one are that it has hyaluronic acid, which it says right here, and then also coconut water. The hyaluronic acid I have no problem with, but at the same time, in something like this where it's a makeup and it's not skincare, I don't think it's necessary. Your skincare and your makeup should not be one and the same. Some makeup that has skincare-like properties is great, but they don't serve the same purpose. So putting it in, to me, just feels a little gimmicky, a little bit like, oh, we're just trying to get you with these words that everyone knows and loves. But I don't have a problem with it. Now, if you do have maybe some kind of allergy to hyaluronic acid, then obviously that's not going to be something you want to use. And again, this one, they both kind of have that dewy, very skin-like finish, and they go on beautifully. I have no problem. I don't think people will know that I have 2 different kinds on, even from the finish, from the color, all of that. They look great. So that boils down to the pros and cons of both of them. The pros, I think they are both really, really beautiful tinted moisturizers. I think you can find your shade. It shouldn't be too hard of a thing. Of course, there's always room for shade improvement. There's always room for growth in shade range. There we go. I think they wear beautifully under other makeup, with other makeup on top of it, and you really just have this flexibility with them. And as I said before, if I'm going to recommend a tinted moisturizer to a friend, it's going to be both of these, and then they just choose the price. So that gets us to our cons. The con is that this one is $47, Laura Mercier. This one is $14. And then it's up to you. It really depends on your price range, your budget, and all these things. But if I were to say go out and buy it right now, I didn't have either one and I wanted an everyday tinted moisturizer, I would probably buy the Colourpop. Honestly, I have not had any issues with it. I think there's something we sometimes inherently attach to a high-end luxury product that it's better, and I myself have done it. I reach for this when I know I have to have something that's just foolproof, but I think this could have done the job. And if I had had this first, if I had never tried the Laura Mercier, I think it would have been a really great purchase and something that I use day in and day out. That said, I have both, and I kind of have these preconceived notions in my head. Something to note, you can find this in Sephora, of course. Well, not of course, but you can. Or on their website. You can do color swatches, I think, now in Sephora if you go in. But, you know, that's a personal preference to you. And then with Colourpop, sometimes it's tricky. They used to sell only on their website, and it was really hard to find your correct shade. If you struggle with shade matching online, I feel ya. But now, well, I say now, it's been, I think, a few years, but they do carry it in Ulta. So if you want to get your shade matched, you can go on in. Even with the pandemic, they're making it safe so you can try it that way. I'm sorry, this wasn't going to be one of those reviews where I tear one down and tell you all the reasons it's terrible. I think it's more about just kind of figuring out what you want for yourself. But yeah, so that is my welcome back video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you are interested in learning more about anything I mentioned in this video, maybe like if you want me to do an update on my life where I just talk to you guys, answer questions, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, thank you for bearing with me. I've got a lot on my plate and I'm happy to be back, and I hope I see you in the next video. Bye guys.